Hi, welcome back to my channel where I talk all about mental health. Sorry that I haven't posted in a couple of weeks. I haven't been very well. I was gonna post a video last Sunday and then every time I tried to get into it I just couldn't. I felt really rubbish. But today I'm back and I'm going to be talking about borderline personality disorder, which is a personality disorder that I have been diagnosed with for the past year now, maybe just under a year, quite a while. Borderline personality disorder is otherwise known as emotionally unstable personality disorder. That's like a more modern term for it, but I just prefer borderline. I don't really like the idea of it being called emotionally unstable. But yeah, as I said, I've had borderline personality for about a year now. I've mentioned in my other videos that I actually have bipolar disorder as well, and bipolar disorder and borderline personality disorder are quite often mixed up. Like, you'll often have people who have either been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and then they've later found out that actually it was BPD, and also the other way around. But I have both, and the reason I have both is that with bipolar disorder I have had a couple of manic episodes which last up to around 2 months, so that is what is classed as bipolar disorder when it has been longer than a few weeks. So it's like a longer term thing, whereas BPD is more of a like a not short term, but your moods change more erratically, so that's how the two are different. So I was actually diagnosed with borderline personality disorder after seeing my psychiatrist about some of my symptoms that I thought were just part of having bipolar disorder. I'd been and I'd talked to him and he actually brought the borderline personality disorder up, and I was then referred to a psychologist who assessed me for 1 hour. I had to fill out a load of forms about my life, about my relationships, my work life, my moods, pretty much everything to do with my personality I had to answer questions on. And basically if you score a certain amount you are then diagnosed with borderline personality. I obviously scored quite high and I was then diagnosed, but while the diagnosis was quite quick, I'd actually been having the symptoms of BPD for quite a while, and what I wanted to talk about today is more the symptoms of it. So yeah, so there are lots of things that make up borderline personality disorder. A fear of abandonment, erratic mood changes, self-destructive behaviour, which can include self-harm, quite intense and unstable friendships and relationships. It can kind of feel quite like bipolar disorder, where you can feel on top of the world but you then crash a lot quicker than you would with bipolar disorder. You can feel very happy and then completely just down and angry and irritable in the space of a day or a couple of days. It's a lot quicker than bipolar disorder. My borderline personality disorder became quite apparent with my relationships. I have been with my partner for 5 years, but before I was diagnosed I was very just quick to anger. We'd have a lot of arguments, and when I'd have arguments I wouldn't be able to control my emotions and I would start crying and screaming, and I was very self-destructive and I would self-harm. I wouldn't be able to cope with the emotions that I was feeling, and that's a big part of BPD, is not being able to just hold on to all the emotions. Like, everything just comes out. Another part with my BPD is a fear of abandonment. So I had quite a few friendships that were quite unhealthy, and I felt like in my relationships I was being quite taken for granted. I'm not going to go into it, but there was a few reasons as to why I felt like this, but I would let this continue because I had a fear of being alone and a fear of being abandoned, so I would let people talk to me in not a very nice way or treat me badly because I didn't want to be abandoned. Another part of the friendship thing is that I had very intense friendships, so I would be friends with somebody and we would do everything together. I would spend every single day with them. We'd go on trips and, you know, be quite impulsive, and I'd put my all into this friendship, and then it would last for a few months and then it would just deteriorate and it would be just to nothing, basically. And I had quite a few of these friendships, so I really struggled to maintain relationships. I was very emotional. I was worried about being alone and being abandoned, and I was also quite insecure. Like, I was constantly worrying about my relationship and about just not feeling secure, even though I was secure, if that makes sense. Like, there was just this overwhelming fear of not feeling good enough and feeling like people were gonna leave me. And yeah, that's, you know, it wasn't, the thing is, BPD for me was quite hard because there were things that I completely like thrived in. Like, I put my all into my work and I felt confident at work, so I had that, you know, I had like a responsible head, but at home behind closed doors it was where I completely crumbled. So yeah, there's a lot more to borderline personality than what I've mentioned, but these were my main symptoms, and it's quite hard. I mean, there is a lot more to it for me, but it's quite hard to distinguish because of the bipolar disorder. It's quite hard to tell you what part of these emotions were bipolar, because with bipolar, when I am manic, I feel really irritable and emotional. So it's quite hard to tell whether it's BPD or bipolar, because at times you can be living with both at the same time, so everything is heightened. But I would definitely say the borderline personality disorder was more of an effect on my relationships. As I said, I received my diagnosis from a psychologist, and I was referred by my psychiatrist, who I see predominantly for my bipolar disorder. And the thing was that my bipolar disorder was quite under control because I'd started a load of new medication, and so my psychiatrist was quite concerned because he was like, okay, so you haven't had a manic episode for a while, and your medication is working, so why are you still having all these self-destructive behaviours? Why are you having all of these feelings and emotions? And that's when, you know, he told me about borderline personality disorder, and then he discussed the main symptoms of it to me, and I really related to that, and which is when he referred me to the psychologist. So I was actually offered to attend something called a STEPS group, which is like an 18-week course where you're with a group and you try different means of therapy. It's kind of like a mental health school where you go and talk and you do a lot and you learn coping mechanisms, and it's all about learning to cope with borderline personality disorder rather than get rid of it, because it is a persistent, quite serious illness. I unfortunately haven't actually started STEPS because unfortunately other things have gotten in the way, but this is definitely something I will be looking into in the future. At the moment, the only ways I really control it is simply by trying to think about my situations a bit more and think for myself and put myself first. So if I feel like I'm being taken for granted by a friend now, I will approach that in a better way. I won't let myself be walked all over. I will deal with that situation. And now when I have arguments and stuff with my partner, I will take myself away from the situation and try some breathing techniques. The problem with borderline personality disorder is that it is a long-term chronic illness, and it takes time to learn how to cope with it, and it's something that I'm still learning how to cope with, because everything else that I deal with, the bipolar, the OCD and the health anxiety, is treated with psychiatry, medication and cognitive behavioural therapy. So borderline personality disorder is the one thing that I have to kind of cope with myself, so it's quite difficult because I feel like I have a lot of responsibility to learn how to cope with it myself. But I will get there, and I will join the STEPS group because I think it will be really beneficial to me. And if anybody else is currently going through a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder, I would approach the idea of therapy because I think it will be really beneficial. Obviously I haven't been through that myself, but having been through CBT at the moment, I can say that that's really helpful. So I would imagine that therapy for borderline will be helpful too. For anybody who may think that they have borderline personality disorder and can relate to the symptoms, I would really recommend seeking help from your GP and writing down a list of all of your symptoms so that you can go into the GP feeling confident that you're able to give them everything that you have been dealing with, so that they can't just fob you off with, oh, it's hormones, or you're just young and a bit, you know, so that you can give them something to say, no, this is what I've been going through, this is what I'm dealing with, and hopefully you'll get some answers. I would ask to be referred to a psychologist and just be completely honest. Just go in with a clear mind, be completely honest about what you've been through, what you're going through, and how you think, if it is BPD, is affecting you. And be persistent and really do push. I mean, it's a shame that with mental health you do have to push, but do try and push the fact that you do need treatment and you do need some help with it. GPs do need to start taking mental health seriously, and I really hope that anybody else who is going through BPD or thinks they are going through BPD is taken seriously, because I know how frustrating it is when you go back and forth to the doctors and you feel like they're not listening. So just try and be persistent, and if you feel like they are not giving you the help that you deserve or that you need, do speak to the receptionist and demand to see another doctor. You are allowed a second opinion or a third opinion, you know, until you feel happy with the treatment. You don't have to stick with one GP if they're not making you feel confident. So yeah, that's my BPD story. Sorry if it was a bit brief and there wasn't much explanation to it. As I said, it's quite hard to distinguish when you have a few mental illnesses, but I hope it has been insightful and helpful, and maybe anybody who feels they may be struggling with the same thing feels a bit clearer on the symptoms so that they can go and seek help. So yeah, that's it today. A big thank you for watching my video. If you would like to keep watching mental health videos, please subscribe to my channel so that you can receive notifications when I next upload. My next video will be posted next Sunday at 3 PM. I'm not 100% sure what I'll be talking about yet, but I will be posting ideas on my Twitter, so do follow my Twitter. It's at Hattie Gladwell with 3 T's. I don't know why I use 3 T's, but yeah, follow me on there, and then you can find out a bit more about what I will be talking about next week. So thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and I will see you next Sunday.